Hello everyone. Firstly, a warning. Please be aware there are aliens amongst us. Yes, on YouTube, amongst movie channels, there is one that is called the Rad Pack. And their handle name is Rad Pack Pod. What? These are pod people. Yes, pod people are amongst us. They fit in very well. They're called Garrett and Justin and Mel, fairly ordinary names, I would say. And they come across as likable, normal human beings. But be very careful. There are a couple of telltale signs. They all wear headwear to disguise the head injuries that they had coming out of their pods, but they present themselves as being fans of the 80s, and so that is why it seems normal for them to have bandanas and trendy looking caps. But pay careful attention to Mel. She has her own channel as well called My Killer Podcast. When she presents herself at the very beginning, she always says, "What's up, killers? And then she says something. And for decades now, well, a little while, I've been trying to work out what it is that she says, but I've been able to use the YouTube subtitles. And it now tells me that she says, "It's your final grommel." I don't know what a grommel is. This is alien speak, but I did look it up on Wikipedia, and grommel is a goblin commander. So yeah, it seems that she is some kind of leader of this pack, possibly. And maybe if you take her face off, it will reveal these tusks and red eyes that are shown if you look up what a grommel is on Wikipedia. So be aware, they exist, they are out there, and they want some information from you. What they want to know is, what are your Rad 9 movies that made you? Now, I was doing a bit of a gesture there, but I got it wrong. I think what you have to do is you have to say rad, like this. I don't know if I've got that right. I've tried doing that a couple of times and I got kicked in the balls, and someone else replied with a middle finger, which I don't think is the appropriate response, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, it is interesting that they want to know about your movies that made you, so I did want to think about that. Sorry? Oh, sorry, they're not aliens. Pod means podcast. They have a podcast. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Sorry. Okay, so I'm being an idiot, but yeah, please do check out the Rad Pack and their channel, particularly if you enjoy 80s movies, 90s movies, horror movies, live streams. They get involved in all of that. Each of them have their own sort of nice setup, all nicely lit, and they're using professional microphones. So yeah, go and see what they're doing on their channel. But I do thank them for the question that they asked. So they asked about what are people's Rad 9 movies that made you, and the particular emphasis on this was looking at films that you watched perhaps as a child on repeat, that sort of made you, if you like. And when I think about it in that context, then yeah, I've been watching other people answering this question already, and if you like, have a look at Huck's Pop Culture Cafe. He did a video on this just recently. I would say I could easily have chosen the same movies that he did, perhaps with one exception. So yeah, do have a look at his video, because I think that encapsulates a lot of what I was watching when I was younger. But equally, other people as well, such as Del on Movies. I mean, he talks about several that I've enjoyed as well. So I'll try and take a different look at this, so I'm not just talking about the same movies. Perhaps to start off with, just my earliest memory of going to the cinema was to see the film Digby, the Biggest Dog in the World, and that was on as a double bill with this film, Northwest Frontier. Very strange to have such a child's movie put on a double bill with this J. Lee Thompson film here that starred Lauren Bacall and Kenneth More. Really good adventure. I remember this more than I do Digby, the Biggest Dog in the World. This was a really adventuresome film that involved a perilous train journey across India. So yeah, this is a really exciting film that I've always enjoyed. But anyway, that's my earliest memory of the cinema. My first Disney film at the cinema was this one, The Rescuers, which I really adore. Absolutely lovely film. Now, when I think back to early childhood on TV, it's amazing to think that for a while there was only 3 TV stations. This is well before cable TV and anything like that, and streaming and all those kinds of things. And it was very difficult even just to rent movies back then. But so yeah, when I think of what I watched in my very early years on TV, that was a lot of Miss Marple films. So Margaret Rutherford starring in Miss Marple movies, particularly one Murder at the Gallop. That was always a fond favourite. Harold Lloyd, there was a lot of Harold Lloyd on TV. Not so much showing all of his movies, but compilations in a show called Hooray for Harold Lloyd. Then there was also loads of Elvis movies. I used to watch those a lot of John Wayne westerns. I watched hundreds of those, and also Carry On movies as well, British comedy with lots of innuendo and sex talk and things like that. They were very funny. And also Basil Rathbone's Sherlock Holmes movies, and particularly The Hound of the Baskervilles. So yeah, all those kinds of things were definitely things that I was watching on repeat, I guess, when I was very young. And then also on the TV stations themselves, like I say, remember when there was just only 3-4 channels for a while, you would get certain films that were real building blocks of holiday seasons. So for instance, The Great Escape and The Sound of Music. These films were always shown at holidays, so I'd watch those loads, as well as, of course, being British, James Bond. James Bond movies on TV used to attract viewers of some 20 million or more watching those, and so that would be very typical to have a Bond movie on every Boxing Day or some other holiday. So yeah, all of those great movies. But okay, let's now think, what other kinds of films was I watching that have really stuck with me? So for me, the first film that I absolutely have to mention is this one, and it's The French Connection from 1971, directed by William Friedkin and starring Gene Hackman, an Oscar-winning film, this one. Yeah, this film was just incredible to me. I saw it when I was 14 and it blew me away so much that, look at this, what's this? This is a little booklet where I actually wrote down The French Connection as being the first film that really impressed me, and then from then on I started keeping a list of movies, which I have stopped at some points over the decades, but I do still actually keep a book going at the moment. This particular book goes from 1983 to 1986, where I'm just listing everything that I'm watching. Actually, it's funny just to read the first 5 films that I've watched here. So I've got The French Connection, then the next movie is the 1953 movie The War of the Worlds, then the 1974 movie The Bank Shot with George C. Scott. We've then got the David Hasselhoff movie of Knight Rider, and then John Wayne in Chisholm. Anyway, The French Connection, yeah, essential part of my movie loving experience, particularly for Gene Hackman in this film. I just thought his performance and the way he delivers his lines and the way he committed to the performance of being out there on the streets in the cold, tracking down Charnier, all of that, it was just mesmerizing to me. So it's not just the car chase, it's the whole film, the way that film was put together, and particularly Gene Hackman as an actor. That was what so impressed me that I had to write it down, and I thought, yeah, I now love movies. Now, another one that was really, really important to me was this one, the film Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders, superb cinematography by Robbie Muller, amazing performances by Harry Dean Stanton and Nastasia Kinski, an incredible script by Sam Shepard, and a phenomenal score by Ry Cooder. So all of these things were things that I noticed in this film and got me really, really excited. So Ry Cooder, I bought that soundtrack, and really that possibly launched me down a route of buying other movie soundtracks. I mean, Ry Cooder did loads of Walter Hill movies, so yeah, even things like Crossroads, he does a fantastic score on that, The Long Riders, loads of other Walter Hill films. So yeah, that's what I like about movies, that there can be stepping stones to find other things. But yeah, Paris, Texas was just phenomenal. Sam Shepard's script particularly was just so good. I used to pore over the lines. There's that amazing scene where Harry Dean Stanton is confronting Nastasia Kinski behind a booth, and he starts that story. I knew these people, these two people, they were in love with each other. I used to go through that monologue in depth, and I used to be able to remember it. I can't remember it now. However, it did really inspire me back then to do some writing, and I actually got published. I had a short story that was published, and so I could for about a week at least go into a bookshop and see a book that was on the bookshelves that you could buy before it rapidly disappeared into the bargain bins and then disappeared. But yes, I did appear in print for a brief while, and the opening lines of my short story were very much borrowed from that speech in Paris, Texas. So instead of saying I knew these people, these two people, I knew this man, this young man. Yeah, so there you go. That was a big inspiration for me. So the script there, the cinematography from Robbie Muller, Wim Wenders' direction. I've definitely been watching more Harry Dean Stanton films, and like I say, Ry Cooder, that launched me into a huge appreciation of Ry Cooder, which remains to this day. I love his guitar style. Now, this chap, Mr. Clint Eastwood, he's certainly been an important part of my movie watching over the years. Decades and decades of enjoying Clint Eastwood movies, both as an actor and his films that he's done as a director as well. Now, I could have gone with Dirty Harry. I mean, definitely this is a film that I watched loads and loads when I was young and can recite that famous speech. I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Incredible lines that was. But I'm not going to go with Dirty Harry for my Clint Eastwood pick. In fact, I'm going to go with this one, which I definitely watched loads of times, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Now, it might not necessarily be my favourite Clint Eastwood movie, but significantly it also stars Jeff Bridges, and Jeff Bridges really blew me away in this film. And so to this day, both of these actors are hugely important to me, and I absolutely love this film. So yeah, this is definitely one that I watched a lot when I was younger. Now, when it comes to horror movies, what I've really noticed over the years is that whilst I do enjoy watching horror movies, in no way am I an expert on horror movies, and there's plenty that I don't watch. And I think a lot of that stems back to when I was younger, when I did watch some horror movies. I didn't really always like the production values in them, nor the scripts. So yeah, I definitely gravitated towards films that had better storytelling, if you like, I suppose. But that's definitely not true of everything, but just, I guess, a bit of an observation about how my movie watching has gone. So when I think of horror, for me, this film actually kind of springs to mind, although it wouldn't really be classified as a horror movie, but it's John Boorman's Deliverance. Hugely significant film, which I did watch several times when I was younger. But yeah, this is just such an uneasy film to watch. It just really creates such an incredible atmosphere, and then also we've got Burt Reynolds in this as well. So I mean, that was perhaps the big draw to watch this film, that you've got Burt Reynolds in it, but so different from his performances in Smokey and the Bandit and the Cannonball Run. So yeah, incredible movie this, but yeah, just so memorable for the discomfort that it made me feel. So that to me is what I really gravitate towards when I'm watching a film. I want to be feeling those don't necessarily want to be feeling them, but those feelings of discomfort and unease and atmosphere. So that's kind of what I want out of a horror movie, rather than just necessarily all the sort of blood, gore, special effects. Again, not true in all cases, but yeah, I guess, like I say, Deliverance is just a good early example of really feeling that kind of sense of dread and atmosphere and responding to that. And here's just a couple of scenes from the movie, this book I have on John Boorman. And then John Boorman, I think, is a terrific director, and he's certainly one that I've kept my eye on over the years. I mean, he's done films such as Hope and Glory, and glorious World War II movie. He did do a follow-up to this as well. Excalibur, which is beautifully visual, The Emerald Forest, which stars his own son, Charlie Boorman. So yeah, a real range of movies from John Boorman. So yeah, Deliverance, that's a key one for me. Now I also have to give mention to the great British director David Lean, responsible for such huge epics as Dr. Zhivago and The Bridge on the River Kwai, as well as wonderful Dickens adaptations including Oliver Twist and Great Expectations, and then beautiful intimate romances as well, such as Brief Encounter. I've enjoyed all of his films over the years, but maybe I should give some special mention to this one, which is Lawrence of Arabia. Huge epic. And just look at some of these incredible desert scenes. So the reason I'm mentioning this one is that I think this probably contributed towards me having a sense of adventure and wanting to get out and see the world. And I was very fortunate to be able to go in the 90s on a huge 6-month expedition through Africa. And that involved me actually getting to spend some time down in the Sahara. So I know that obviously this is Lawrence of Arabia, so we're not talking about Africa, but nonetheless I had this film, I guess, in mind when I was getting the opportunity to go through desert. And in fact, a lot of the desert that I went through was a lot flatter and less colourful than David Lean is able to make it in his films. But I'll just show you. This is me in the Western Sahara. I don't know if you can see that very well. And then this is just another shot. This is when I'm in Central Africa. But as you can see, I was trying to go a little bit for an Indiana Jones type look, but that really didn't work for me. A lot of the time my hat just got wet and I ended up looking more like a farmer than Indiana Jones. But nonetheless, yeah, I think Lawrence of Arabia definitely deserves a mention for giving me a sense of adventure. Now, to this day, I continue to absolutely love Western movies, and I certainly watched loads and loads of Westerns when I was younger, and particularly John Wayne Westerns. John Wayne Westerns were on all the time at home. But there's a film from 1953 which is not John Wayne, and it's a film that I really want to mention, and it's this film, Shane. Now this one is really important to me because when I watch this, not only is this a really beautiful Western, the cinematography from Loyal Griggs in this one is just stunning, but this was perhaps the first Western that really made me notice sound in a different way. So a lot of Westerns up until that point that I'd been watching had that kind of, you know, whenever there was a gunfight it sounded more like a cap gun going off. But with Shane, this was very different. When he shot a gun in this, you really felt the sound of that gun going off, and also when the villainous Jack Palance is walking around, you really hear his spurs. So yes, sound in this was really noticeable, and just something completely different to what I'd associated with Westerns before this time. It might not seem the same now, obviously, because there's so many other films that have come since then, but yeah, this was very significant to me in terms of appreciating sound in a movie. So there's that amazing sequence where Jack Palance is talking to Elisha Cook Jr., who's stumbling around in the mud, and Jack Palance is taunting him, and you really hear the spurs as he's walking around, and then this incredible gunfire sound when he shoots Elisha Cook Jr. down. That has just stayed with me all these years. Yeah, I think Shane is an incredible movie. Now, films about children growing up, I mean, yeah, for sure, those were important to me, and I would watch those when I was younger. I mean, in the 80s, definitely a movie like Stand By Me, that was hugely enjoyable, one I'd watched several times. But going back, well, before then, definitely this film, The Yearling, was important to me. This one stars Gregory Peck, and that's Claude Jarman Jr. there, about a young boy who's trying to look after this deer. But yeah, really wonderful childhood story, this one. And then there was The Railway Children, a very significant British movie that's got a young Jenny Agutter in it. A beautiful movie, absolutely adored that and watched that loads of times. But the one I want to mention specifically is this one, Whistle Down the Wind, which stars a very young Hayley Mills here, and this was directed by Brian Forbes, a really good writer, actor, director from the UK, who doesn't really get talked about so much anymore, but yeah, hugely important in British cinema. But Whistle Down the Wind, absolutely glorious film, really about these children who live on a farm and they discover this escaped convict in the barn, but they mistake him for being Jesus, and it's a really charming film, and just one that I've enjoyed watching again and again over the years, and also to this day I still will look out for any movie that's got Hayley Mills in it as well. I adore her as well, just such a wonderful person. So yeah, Whistle Down the Wind, hugely important. Now, film noir is a genre that I continue to enjoy, and so I was thinking back to the early days and what really prompted me to go down that route of enjoying film noir. Definitely I could say that Double Indemnity is hugely important in that regard, and just that absolutely incredible script and the amazing dialogue between Fred MacMurray and Barbara Stanwyck in that film. But the film that perhaps predates that for me and really got me going, the one I want to talk about is this one, Murder My Sweet, which is also known by the title Farewell My Lovely, and this is a Philip Marlowe movie, but you've got Dick Powell here as Philip Marlowe. I absolutely loved this film when I first saw it, and again, just lines of dialogue that really stayed with me. You know, she was cuter than a pair of lace panties, and when he gets knocked on the head, oh, a black hole opened up in front of me and I dived right in. You know, things like that. It's just, I loved all that kind of dialogue. So yeah, this one, I will guess, probably started off my love for film noir. So yeah, I feel I have to mention it. There you go. Now, another area of cinema that I really enjoy is all the practical effects, and particularly stop motion work. I absolutely adore the work of the great Ray Harryhausen. All of his films have been so enjoyable, all the Sinbad movies, and then early works such as The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, It Came from Beneath the Sea, and this glorious one, 1 Million Years BC. I certainly watched this loads and loads of times. But there is one movie that I would like to mention, which is not actually Ray Harryhausen, but it's probably my earliest memory of stop motion effects. And I saw it at such a young age that it actually had a really big effect on me. There was a scene in it which seems very tame now, but it really scared me at the time because I was so young. And the film I'm talking about is this one, Jack the Giant Killer, directed by Nathan Joran. Now this has a scene in it early on in the film where the princess is given this creature in a glass jar, and you see it moving around, and she takes it to her bedroom, and it's by her bedside at night, and then during the night this creature grows and grows and grows and becomes a giant in her bedroom. It absolutely terrified me when I was very young, but like I say, the special effects on this one look a little bit crude now, and especially compared to the great work of Ray Harryhausen. But nonetheless, I'm going to include Jack the Giant Killer here as being hugely influential for me. And international cinema is also an area of cinema that continues to be one that I explore as much as I possibly can, and I still have loads of blind spots. But yeah, when I think back to my early childhood and my first remembrances of foreign movies, international movies, I mean, for sure there was plenty of French movies, I guess, and particularly the work of Jacques Tati, Mon Oncle being an example. Certainly watched lots of Jacques Tati when I was younger, but also films such as Les Jeux Interdits, Forbidden Games by René Clément, that was on TV quite a bit, and this great Jules Dassin thriller Rafifi, superb movie. Now one of my earlier memories actually is watching the film Patha Panchali, the Satyajit Ray movie, so that was all filmed in India, and I think that was really my earliest memory of seeing a movie abroad, if you like. So that film definitely is important to me, but I'm not showing that one because I actually haven't got a physical copy of it. I really need to get the Apu trilogy. But yeah, I absolutely adore that film. So for my international movie choice, if you like, one of the earliest memories that I'm going to go with is this one, La Belle et la Bête by Jean Cocteau, Beauty and the Beast. And what really sticks in my mind for this is there's this beautiful, beautiful scene early on in the movie where Beauty has arrived at the castle, and she's walking through the corridors, and you have these arms that are sticking out of the walls holding candles that light her way, and that imagery just really, really stayed with me. And then she goes through this big wooden arched doorway, and the film then goes to slow motion as she runs through it, and just such a beautiful, beautiful shot that just really stayed in my mind. So I always really adore this film, La Belle et la Bête. So there you go. I've tried to talk about a range of movies that have shaped me in some way or another. Definitely can't begin to go through all of the movies that have done that. But just on a final note, and just to perhaps keep this a bit more in the spirit of the 80s, because I think that's probably what the Rad Pack are looking for, then I'll definitely talk about this one movie from the 80s that I think is hugely, hugely important to me. And it's this one, Streets of Fire, starring Michael Paré, and it's a Walter Hill movie. And again, we've got a film score here by Ry Cooder. But yeah, this film is just amazing to me. Now, when I think of superhero movies, so things that have been adapted from comic books, I've realized that over the years I'm not so much drawn to those movies, although I certainly watch plenty of the Marvel and DC Universe movies. But when I think of Streets of Fire, this to me is a movie that feels so much like a comic book. Just the way that it's put together, and I feel like Michael Paré's character in here could really exist in a comic book, and I think Michael Paré's casting in this was just superb. I know he gets criticism for perhaps not being the greatest actor, but I thoroughly disagree with that. I think in this movie he is the perfect casting for this role, and I enjoy his performance so much, and just everything about this film, all the neon lighting, kissing in the rain, and all the crazy kind of action scenes that there are in this, and the music as well, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, everything about Streets of Fire I absolutely adore. So yeah, for an 80s pick, there you go, this will be it for me. All right, this has probably gone on a bit too long, so I hope you've stuck with me. Thanks very much for watching me. Thanks again to the Rad Pack for making this community challenge. Like I say, apologies if I'm not hugely familiar with all of your channel, but definitely anyone that's interested in 80s, 90s horror movies, live streams, please do go and check them out. I'll put the links below to their channels. Okay, that's it from me. All the best to you. Hopefully I'll see you again on some other videos. Bye-bye.